How are you today? Thank you for braving the rain and the traffic to come up here. My name is Tom Bergeron. I'm the editor of ROI-NJ. And I have to start with a funny story. I don't know if you guys could hear it. Apparently, we brought the Time Life sound of the 70s, if anybody was hearing the music that was coming. So just last weekend, I went to pick up my daughter at the University of Michigan. And if anybody's made that drive, you go right across Route 80 in Pennsylvania, which is otherwise known as the middle of absolutely nowhere. Fortunately, we have satellite radio, so my wife and I fight back and forth where we either listen to the best of the 70s or the best of the 80s. And it's great for us, and then we get my daughter, and she comes back, and she has no interest. And it reminds me of Elaine from Seinfeld. One day she's going to win a contest because she's going to know what Jefferson Airplane was and Jefferson Starship that none of her friends know. But she knows whenever she gets in the car, it's always the best of the 70s and 80s. So there you are. Thank you. Welcome. Glad you're here. For those of you who have been to an RI event or not been to an RI event, what we like to do is we like to get key thought leaders, which we did right here. We like to get good talkers, which I think we did right here. And we like to let the audience run the show. So I'm going to be sort of the MC and the moderator. We're going to give these guys a chance to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about what they're doing, not too long. We'll yank them if they go too long. A couple of questions. And I said to people, we want to let you guys bring a lot of questions. These guys can talk about a lot of different issues in the business, so we want to see which direction you're going. So with that in mind, let's go across. We're going to start with Andrew. 90 seconds, 2 minutes. Tell the audience who you are, what you do, why you're here.
My name is Andrew Sample. Good morning. Happy to be here. It's hard to say this. I've been at my firm 29 years doing commercial real estate with James Hansen out of Hackensack. People ask me all the time, what do you do? We're client-driven, right? Office, industrial, land deals. It's very boring. We push rocks up a hill every day, and we try to make our clients happy.
Simon, let's see if you can top that.
I'll try.
It's that 90-second thing.
You made it. Just there. Good morning, Tom. All right, thanks for having me. My name is Simon. I'm a tax partner at KRS Real CPAs in Paramus, where I lead the firm's real estate tax practice. I work with individuals and businesses, including real estate professionals, owners, operators. We're client-focused also. It's all about client needs, client desires, helping our clients achieve their goals, both individually and businesses. Our clients are typically small businesses, closely held businesses. In the real estate arena, it's owners, operators, developers, wholesalers, flippers. It runs the spectrum. Been working in the tax arena for 15 years.
Oh, good. All right, next we're going to go to Kevin, and I'll ask the first question. Let's talk about the socks. We've got him elevated. He's winning the sock contest. Great look. Other than the fashion, Kevin, tell us what you do.
Hi, good morning. Kevin Dudley. I work at CBRE for about 8 years. I was actually an intern there 10 years ago. And I do two things. I work on a team of 10 in Saddlebrook. And on one hat, I work with tech and logistics companies throughout the country, doing deals in Texas, California, even Hawaii this year. And then on the other side, I work with institutional investors, helping them find, acquire, and then lease industrial properties throughout the country. So that's what I do in a nutshell.
Nevin, you're up.
All right, Nevins McCann. I'm a partner at Connell Foley. I'm the co-chair of our real estate group. I've been at Connell Foley for 20 years now. Moved down to Jersey City to open up that office in 2001, and it's been a hell of a run down there since. We represent our clients in pretty much every aspect of real estate and across every sector, from industrial to office to warehouse, retail, and of course residential. Happy to be here today and answer some of your questions.
All right, so I'm going to start it off, and one of the things that we talked to the panel about that some people are seeing and start to see, we're going to talk about the tax issue with the new laws and how it changed it. We're going to talk about the tax issue with Governor Murphy, but we also want to talk about the dread millennials and how they're impacting the real estate market. And one of the things some of these guys, and I'll let them jump in here, was talking about how for the first time in a while there's sort of a growth of a condo market. The multifamily is still hot, still rolling along, but as the millennials get a little bit older and they have a couple of kids, we all know what happens. They're looking for, to buy something. They're looking for a little bit more room. So let's start with there. Let's talk about a don't want to say suddenly, but a growing condo market that 3 years ago we're not having this conversation.
Yeah, so I'll jump on that one. So in Jersey City, where we do most of our work, we operate throughout the entire state, but Jersey City has been a real driver with its location across from Manhattan. And for the last, 10 years, it's just been multifamily, which has done well. There's been a lot of talk about whether there's too much on the market, whether they can absorb all those units. And we've come to realize from our numerous clients that, they're not so much concerned about the absorption because the universities and graduate schools are graduating every year, and kids are coming to New York or Philadelphia or major cities looking for a job. We used to do a lot of condo projects, though, right when we got to Jersey City. And just recently, we have probably 2 or 3 condo projects in the pipeline. And I was out in Airbnb headquarters out in San Francisco a couple months ago, working a deal for a client to, do a project with Airbnb to sponsor their building to get it on their platform. And we were inside Airbnb headquarters, which was a fascinating thing to see if you're ever out there. But they have this screen on the wall where they're watching all the reservations happening all over the world simultaneously. And what they were saying is they gather so much information on people that they start seeing trends before the people even realize the trend is happening. And what they noticed with millennials was fascinating. They said the millennials are more concerned about their image to their friends and to the outside world than home ownership or anything like that. So there's two
That
aspects.
makes us all feel good about the future if that's the driving point of the economy is pure image.
But
Go
there's
ahead.
2 aspects to it. So they'd rather have their Instagram account, their Facebook account of them showing pictures of them traveling all over the world. So they rent a place. It's a small place. They look at it as a launch off spot. They'll Airbnb it and go Airbnb somewhere else, and they'll take all their pictures. But as they grow up, and so you're starting to see some of them get married, have kids, that lifestyle slows down a little bit, as we all know. So now there's some of them are looking to stay in those urban areas if they can, and there's not much product for condo. So some of the wise developers are starting to see that opportunity. It's not going to be the condo, glut that we had, 10, 15 years ago, but it's coming back now.
Anybody else want to jump in?
My office is in Hackensack. We are between the old record site and the Johnson Library. The firm is 6 years old. We've been in the same building 55 years. As an entity, we're moving to Teterboro. We need more space, but one of the other drivers that's kind of pushing us out of Hackensack, within a quarter of a mile of our office, depending on what day it is, there's either 2 or 2,500 apartments coming out of the ground in Hackensack. And it's going to be this big shift in demographics. We don't necessarily want to be in the middle of all this residential, but it always strikes me, I understand the Hoboken, I understand the Brooklyn, I understand the Jersey City, and I don't want to be poo-pooing Hackensack, but I just have a tough time imagining 2,000 or 2,500 apartments more or less coming out of the ground at the same time in Hackensack. And I think about the millennials and my children's future, and I don't know if Hackensack will ever be their top 10 destinations, but and most of this product is all for lease. If I think the conversation changes if it's for sale. It gives somebody an opportunity to say, okay, I'm planted here in Hackensack. As I said, I've been at my firm 29 years. I married with my wife more or less about the same time. There's never been one time in my entire tenure at James Hansen I said, hey, by the way, let's go to dinner on Main Street in Hackensack. It's just never happened. But if there's a change in demographics, and I don't know how you think about it, and I don't know how complicated it is, Hackensack has got this they're trying to rejuvenate the downtown to go to all these apartments, knock down the old antiquated office retail. To do all this residential, is it easier? Because some of these projects, again, I don't know where the people are coming from. Can they convert to for sale product? Because I think that would help Hackensack more than the leasing. Yeah, that's you.
Yeah, so I've had numerous clients start with a residential project and flip it to a condo, or it started as a condo and it wasn't going well, they flipped it to a rental. Yeah, you can convert pretty effortlessly. But along the lines of what you're saying, urban areas is where people want to live. Unless you're starting a family, then you want to move out to to a suburban area. But what drives the investment is access to infrastructure and transportation. So if Hackensack, I don't know what Hackensack's transportation, mass transit situation is.
There's a couple rail lines, but again, it's not Jersey City, it's not Hoboken, it's not Harrison.
But if it's got a rail line and they're trying to create a town center, the town centers are the key to suburban areas' success.
It has a town center, an outdated town center.
All right, so Simon, let's go to you. Sorry, let's bring in the tax element of everything that's going on right now with what you're seeing with not just Governor Murphy and what he may or may not do and the new tax changes. How is that impacting what you guys are seeing in the real estate sector?
As far as the commercial side or the home ownership side? Because on home ownership,
both sides.
So for the recently passed Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the one that was quickly pushed through recently, the cost of home ownership has actually increased because deductions have diminished. As most of you probably know, we live in New Jersey. We have high state taxes. We have high real estate taxes. Under the new law, taxes, both income, real estate, sales and use tax, if that's something you take on your tax return, are capped now at $10,000. Anybody living in this area, that pretty much is eaten up by your real estate taxes. Then you have your state income taxes. There's no more benefit. So I read a study the other day that based upon 2017 tax filings and the 2018 tax law, 57% of the people that took itemized deductions, which includes real estate taxes, state income taxes, mortgage interest, will no longer be itemizing. So there's not going to be that big benefit to owning your own home, which makes home ownership more expensive and may guide people to rentals.
All right, let's slide over to commercial and industrial. And Kevin, give me some thoughts on where you see the market going, some of the changes that you're seeing. What are you guys dealing with right now?
Well, I wanted to just touch quickly on the taxes first, but one of the things we're seeing is with new construction projects in Newark, Elizabeth, for big box warehouses, you have to be very careful with the taxes because a lot of times if you don't get what's a pilot, which is a payment in lieu of taxes, which gets you a set number, the state, once you build your building and you lease it to an Amazon, as what happened in Elizabeth, they had an estimate, they did not get a pilot, and the estimate was going to be, so the tax would be about $2.50 per square foot, and it ended up, after the tenant took the building, it was in the $4.55 range, which obviously is when you're talking about 100,000 feet, you're doubling your tax number. But for New Jersey industrial real estate, I think one of the trends that we're seeing is we've done 3 projects recently where they're taking office buildings in suburban areas, Lyndhurst and Carlstadt, and tearing them down and turning them into big box industrial warehouses to service the city. So last mile, e-com, and I think that's going to be an emerging trend that's going to continue. We're doing a project right now in Lyndhurst on that.
All right. I can keep going, but I said I'll take questions from the audience if somebody wants to jump in. Yes, sir.
I guess my question is for Simon. I understand the industrial question, but if I'm a millennial or I'm somebody that's fairly successful, why would I live in New Jersey, right? For me, I'm going to move.
We're only bashing Hackensack today, not the whole state of New Jersey. Let's try to limit it.
But the point is that you can work elsewhere. I mean, you don't have to be in New Jersey. So as a tax professional, what's the advantage at this point of living here, right? If I'm somebody that's successful, I'm out of here.
Well, where are you earning your money? Are you able to work remotely from any state?
Yeah, sure.
Well, that's not the case. A lot of high earners and a lot of clients are working in Manhattan, working on Wall Street. They're also millennials and they're also pulling in big dollars. They're not going to be able to make that in Idaho.
As much as I'm frustrated, as I get older and the more I pay, it's
The more you earn too.
My wife is not here, so it's about I look at it, what am I getting for my money? My children are in college now. They're out of the public school system. Yes, you're right. I could downsize, have a smaller house. But there's some big issues that do I make the move to Florida? Personally, I can't because of what I do every day. To start on my income tax, do I try to save that and some of those dollars? But I don't want to get too negative. I do think Jersey is a great place to be. We have New York City, if you like that. We have the mountains. We have unbelievable golf courses, if that's what you like. We have the beach. We were talking before, and I kind of think the town where I live up Route 17, and Apple Ridge Golf Course, if anyone knows it, is gone now, and they're building single-family houses. And I think their price point is going to be that $1.5 million number. And there's about, I think there's 100. I think there's 55 in Upper Saddle River and 45 in Mahwah. It's a combination of that. That's a lot. So there's 100 single-family houses coming out of the ground there, plus the traditional stock of homes that are available. And you say, who's going to go there? So in our office, we spend a lot of time thinking about millennials, and we took over an office building, and it was a Class A office building. It got a little tired, and we're changing it to attract millennials, conference rooms, some more amenities, just to make it a younger building, if you will. But going back to the residential, these people, I believe, I bought my house at 32. I think my parents bought their house when they were 26 or 28. And I think the pendulum shift for millennials is they'll eventually want to own their real estate, tax codes to the side. But I think it's going to take them a little bit longer. There's no reason for them to settle down. They like to have different jobs. I've been at the same firm since I graduated college. The typical millennial has 14, 15 jobs. But they're going to want to be planted, and I think they're going to want to be planted not necessarily in Mahwah, Upper Saddle River, but they're going to want to be in Westfield. They're going to want to be in Ridgewood. They're going to want to be in towns where there's a train, and they could say to their wife and kids, Sunday morning, Saturday morning, let's just walk down the street to go get breakfast or lunch or dinner, whatever, without the commute. So I do believe in a long-winded New Jersey is a great place. If you've been to New York City lately, I got married in New York City. It's overwhelmingly crowded. I just can't believe it. But I think Jersey is a great place just because we're the suburbs. It's nice. It's green. And I don't want to take away from the public school system either.
Lori Griffa.
Good morning. I'm Lori Griffa from Archer and Griner, based in Hackensack. So
I know where you are.
I'm going to give a plug for Hackensack. It's like the United Nations of lunches. Main Street has the cuisine of the world. So you wouldn't go there for dinner, but you might go for lunch. I would say Hackensack is going to be a graduate school planner's thesis paper, because we're going to see what 2,000 apartments do. And I'm going to remind everybody what New Brunswick looked like in 1980 before they started building apartments downtown. So I hate when people take the microphone and make a comment. I actually have a question for Simon. Sure. So the new tax law. Some of you may remember our former governor, and that's a laugh line. Ed
McMahon in the room.
Who had the Grow New Jersey program, which provided tax credit incentives for people who were either going to remain here or move here from out of state. The tax code provisions that have reduced the corporate business tax seems to undermine that type of tax incentive financing program. The reality of the program was you got the tax credit, you sold the tax credit to someone else who needed it more than you did, and you took that capital, you put it into your project. If the corporate tax code is more availing to the corporate business, is that going to undermine state-sponsored incentive programs that are going to create economic development for this new governor and future governors? It's an easy one, softball.
Well, the Grow New Jersey program is going to have less power. It's going to be diminished. There's a new federal program as part of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act that Evans and I were speaking about. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Qualified Opportunity Zone, which is essentially every state was required to designate census tracts that they wanted to direct investment in. And Governor Murphy submitted a proposal for 169 census tracts in New Jersey, a lot of them in the area. Some of them are Hackensack, Teterboro, Clifton, Passaic. And what that does, it allows investors to take their appreciation, their gains that they haven't been taxed on, and invest in certain areas within the state under these guidelines of the Qualified Opportunity Zones. So Grow New Jersey may have less benefits, less teeth, but there's other programs that are being introduced to attract more investment.
So let's talk about the opportunity zones. I know we all read an ROI when we did our story on when Amazon came to Newark. The Amazon people kind of cornered Booker on the bus and said, tell us more about these opportunity zones, which Booker co-wrote with Tim Scott from South Carolina. And there's a lot of discussion on that. Now, the downside is there can be opportunity zones in every state, but the Amazon people really seem to want to know there is some uncertainty. I know as these zones were picked and selected by the governor, people have told me the governor pretty much said, well, I've given you 6, just tell me where you want to put them, and that's what happened. So nobody really knows what's going to happen with those. Are you seeing an impact with the opportunity zones?
Not yet. I mean, it's early. There's still some meat to be put on that bone, but it's a different program, than the Grow New Jersey was able to mitigate risk for projects. They were able to take those tax credits and sell them and invest it in their projects. This is the opportunity zones, as I understand it, is more along the line of like the 1031, where you can invest into a project and you can step your basis up depending on how long you're doing it. But the window's tight. I don't know how impactful it's going to be. I mean, it's better than nothing, but the runway is short, and it doesn't mitigate risk. I think projects that are going to be successful will become more successful, but ones that are challenged, I don't know how much of an impact it's going to have on them.
All right, I want to talk about 2 things that New Jersey is betting its future on. One is the Amazons of the world and the e-commerce, and the other is marijuana, and how that impacts real estate in the different markets that we have. Kevin, I'll start with you, and we'll go to the other guys on just talking about those 2 elements. What are you seeing in the market real estate-wise where people are looking to jump in to take advantage of those 2 opportunities, we'll say?
Well, we see it a lot. I mean, I think Amazon, when they acquired Whole Foods, everybody was talking about them getting into the food market, trying to take over the Blue Aprons of the world and the food delivery. But really what we're seeing from them is that they're really trying to solve the last touch, last mile problem, which, is getting to all the people that live in the urban areas. And if you look at all the Whole Foods locations, I mean, they're really all on Main and Main. And so all those 15 artisanal cheeses that you see at a Whole Foods, that's going to go down to 5 where you can order them. And some of these, the pharmacy they're getting rid of that as well. And that's going to shrink, and they're going to put some last touch distribution in those, which is going to solve that problem for them and add a lot to their value.
From an industrial standpoint on some of the warehouses, where is there an opportunity for some of these companies to come in and pick up what's left of the open stock?
Well, I think it's tough because you're seeing the prices raised. I mean, so we did a deal where we helped a company move from Brooklyn to New Jersey, and the price point of on a net basis is we're at that flux right now. So there was a building where they came back to us at $15 a foot in Teterboro, Hackensack, the new Forest Gate stuff, and they said that's too much. And we ended up doing a deal around $11 a square foot. So that there is like a shift kind of where, in the Meadowlands, if you wanted to solve that problem, there was no limit to your number. And now we're kind of seeing there is a limit. So I think the opportunity it'll continue as there's probably about 12 million square feet of new development coming up in the next 18 months of industrial space. But I think there will be some downward pressure on pricing.
Andrew, how are you seeing that market?
We've used this expression too often, but it's red hot, white hot. Any new building that's got height that's over 200,000 square feet, south of Bergen County, if you will, is leased. We, as a firm, it's kind of interesting. I wasn't on the project. One of my associates, Ken Lumberg, was. There's a brand new building up in Mahwah, if anyone saw it. It's 270,000 square feet behind Sharp. And they rented it to a company called Snowjo, which had 3 buildings in the Meadowlands.
Yep.
And Snowjo, who was Meadowlands-centric, opted to go to Mahwah, to a brand new building. And one of the reasons they made that move, they'll come out of the other buildings, they'll go into Mahwah. What was the drayage cost? In Mahwah, it was cheaper than some of the other facilities they looked at. So it's a kind of an interesting, when you think about that, because you think, wow, Mahwah is so far away compared to anything. But it worked for that company, and it was a 270,000 square foot brand new building. Kevin touched on 2 buildings, Forest Gate, which is the Klatskin Company's building along Route 80. One's at 200,000, one's 100,000. In that market, the 200 is about a year old. It's been sitting there. The 100,000 foot building is not quite complete, but they have a lot more action on the 100,000 than they do in the 2. So Bergen County as a market in that Route 80 corridor is probably 100,000 square feet plus or minus. Is big, really big. But south of us, going down to Carteret and Elizabeth, and I think Kevin and his team should talk about some of the phenomenal things that has happened in Carteret. But you see these big boxes going real quick, real fast, on numbers that are approaching double digits. So when the world went upside down between 08 and 09, most of us saw an increase in our commission checks that was pretty substantial because these as of late, if you will, because these rents are $9.50, $10, $12. That who would have thought in 08 and 09 we would see that? But I think you should talk a little bit about your experience in Carteret because the numbers are incredible.
Yeah, well, sure. So, it's actually interesting because what happened there is Exit 12 was kind of seen as a difficult place to get to before they changed the interchange there. And since they've completed that, I think that was about like 7 years ago, there's been an increase of 7 million square feet to a 17 million square foot market. And when you think about that on that scheme, I mean, that's about a 40% growth in 7 years, which is pretty substantial. And a lot of that taken by Amazon. Amazon's taken 4 million square feet just in that Exit 12 interchange since that happened. And what you're seeing is, projects that were on a forward sale basis selling at $130 a square foot, $120 a square foot. We recently did it at around $185, $190 a square foot. And that's for unleased properties. So, when you think about that and you look at how you get to a cap rate on that, it's very aggressive, but both buildings were leased during the due diligence period. So when you think about it that way, maybe it's not as big of a risk. The if you build it, they will come is, it's a joke, but that's what we tell when we pitch to a developer. We tell them that, and then we succeed.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a comment and a question. Thank you. It's about innovation, right? Okay. Hello. It's about innovation and like beginning with the end in mind. You alluded to it earlier about getting people and moving people to their destination. And personally, I'm working on a project, the People Mover, like a first mile, last mile connector kind of system, but having trouble getting traction, talking to developers about that and everything. And I'm just wondering, the question is like how high in the priority list when you're speaking to the potential developers and tenants is moving people? I mean, if Newark gets Amazon, 50,000 people, where are they going to go? How are they going to get to their destination? I'm just wondering about like innovation and moving people. How high of a priority is that?
Yeah, so I mean, we're seeing it's an extremely high priority. So you touched on it right there is, labor first is extremely important, and you have to, companies like Amazon and all the e-com, they have their labor of 500 people, 700 people in the warehouse, and they also have the surge labor of, during the peak months, they need to get another 500, 800 employees. So, how do you get them there? And I think one of the ways that developers and occupiers are kind of touching and tackling that is they're looking at a lot of predictive analytics. So, what will be the way of the future? Will it be driverless cars, which I think is something that will also affect millennials and where they live as well. But I think that will kind of help with that. But public transportation, figuring that question out is definitely a cause of concern and question.
Well, let me jump in because it's going to. You touched on it, and it's fast becoming a problem in the state of New Jersey. Unemployment. So when Amazon wants to open up a facility now, they may have job problems getting people. When Amazon opened up a Robbinsville, we went down and took a look at it. Robbinsville is 7A on a turnpike. And, you got this monster building and this parking lot the size of 3 football fields. But when you look in the cars, you see New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Delaware license plates. So people were coming for that. I mean, that was a couple of years ago. Unemployment wasn't there. It's now 4.5%. Yesterday morning, I was at a Bergen County event, and they were talking about American Dream and that getting ready to open up in 2019. And they're talking about 20,000 jobs. And again, the reality is if unemployment is 4.1, 4.5%, where are they coming from? And how will Governor Murphy, is that going to affect with changing a minimum wage? And it becomes a game changer because we all represent warehouse guys and we all represent industrial tenants and surge labor, the holidays and so forth. And there's always a way to get help. And by the way, it's a good problem to have. I'm not saying it's a bad problem. But where do the employees come from to support 20,000 jobs or the next big Amazon deal? It's just a question because if we're going to raise minimum wage, where did the dollars come from?
And just to touch on that really quick. So, we're having conversations with, some of these e-com tenants, and there's a number of that growing wage when they're hiring 500, 700 employees where automation makes sense, where it's, if you look at that on the basis of how many employees you have. And I think that will be, as the wage rises, which I think it should, there will be a number where all of a sudden the jobs will.
So I'm going to ask the question, what's the number?
I don't know the answer to that. I think
it's a supply-demand thing.
Yeah.
They're building buildings now in Brooklyn. It's just going to be a brand new 3-story building in Brooklyn.
Right.
Who would have thought? Jet.com took 150,000 feet
50,000
in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
For $20 a foot.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? The old ABC carpet building. So you see these trends, and you just say, let's kind of hold on and go for the ride and just say, but how's it all going to come to fruition? How's it going to make sense employee-wise and so forth and so on? To just quickly change, because these things come into my head, I'm sorry. There was a FedEx facility in the Bronx for sale. They were selling it as an investment vehicle. A FedEx facility. And it was valued somewhere around, did you see, I don't know if it came across, $360 million for a FedEx property.
Right.
Now, I think it was going to go down. It was going to get traded somewhere around $310 a foot, but it's $310 million. It's big numbers to buy existing real estate that you have some credit, that you take that lottery ticket to the bank every month. It's a game changer because you're taking the old and you're making it better.
All right, more questions. Yes, sir.
I think going back to what happened South Andrew with the 2,500 units, whatever, we are enjoying the last several years, not free money, but cheap money and plenty of it. Once the credit markets tighten and developers can't get loans, you're not going to see spec money go flying in. You're not going to see the millennials trying to buy a house, qualify. You're not going to see industrial guys, unless they're publicly held companies where it's not their own money, specking. It's going to tighten things up. And we've had the biggest expansion that we've had. We've been in business 40 years. We haven't seen anything like it. And Bill and I did a deal back in 2010 when you couldn't get money. All the windows shut down. We're very fortunate to do a deal here in Englewood for about $15.5 million with
financed by a Korean bank. And the buyer was very lucky because he was a Korean company to get that money. So we can all enjoy ourselves, you can all think in terms of speculative projects, but as soon as credit tightens up, when the banks have to raise their capitalization, that's going to put a squeeze right through the whole economy. And you got the other things, Murphy with his $15 labor, it's a big if. And it's not only with Amazon coming in looking for labor, when they come into a market, but if you're paying $10.50, $11 an hour wages because you're a warehouse, Amazon comes in, they're paying $13.50. Those guys are not necessarily concerned about Amazon because they have the largest capital reserve in the world right now. I'm more worried about the basic guys who are in that market at $11. They're not getting any of the fanfare. It's only thinking about what Amazon and how we went to Amazon. I'm all about saving the jobs that we have and saving the entrepreneurs.
I can't agree with you more. I can't agree with that more. I think that the pre-Christie administration, remember there was two groups in the state of New Jersey. It was the BRAG program, business retention, which was a joke, and then the BEEP, bringing in the new businesses. But nonetheless, it's not a question if you like Christie or not. During the tenure of his governance, businesses were comfortable here. Regulations were a little better. But I agree with you 100%. Keeping jobs here. I thank you. Kudos.
Back room.
Mix everything together, unemployment in New Jersey, tax law, what have you. What do you guys see happening with the vacancy rates in New Jersey on both the commercial and real estate side of things?
All-time low.
Yeah.
All-time low.
And going lower. But I do think that, not to on the continuous subject, but I think that the Grow New Jersey, if that goes away, which I think at least the teeth of it are going away, that's going to be a huge problem for companies. We've done 4 Grow New Jersey deals going up to $30-40 million for the company, and the only reason that they chose here was because of Grow New Jersey, and I think that going away is really we're gonna lose some huge projects.
How soon do you see Grow New Jersey going away?
Well, I don't think it's going to be renewed when it's up. Yeah, I think when it comes up in 2019, I do not think it's going to be renewed, and I think that is a scary thought.
In talking with the administration, Murphy's administration, they're facing major budget issues, and we are facing major budget issues in this state. And when those tax credits start coming online, it increases the budget every single year to fund those payments. I think the Murphy groups think it was an enormous giveaway. I did a number of Grow New Jersey deals myself. It did bring in companies that we would not otherwise have had. Definitely. But is the investment worth it? So they're saying every year $1 billion is going to be coming on top of that budget with all the money they gave away. So they're looking at that now, looking at whether it was fair of how they sold their credits, whether they're keeping up with those obligations. But to touch on something, Tom, that you brought up earlier, cannabis, the green rush, talk about coming in here hot. Our phone is ringing off the hook at my firm, looking for office, looking for warehouse.
What are they looking for?
Yeah, looking for the goods. The issue is New Jersey is the most densely populated state in the nation. It's between New York and Philadelphia. Our numbers defy logic. We should be the best in the country across the board, and we're at the bottom of the heap. We're the top of the bad list or the bottom of the good list, and it's unfortunate. But it's because of, as we brought up earlier, the tax situation, the cost of living. But with the cannabis companies coming in, it's a new industry. It's just a different business, but it needs all the same things.
Yeah, but let's talk a little bit about cannabis, because we were talking before about how a lot of the cannabis is still controlled with the national companies, and they're a little hesitant to come here. and there's a little bit of a hurry up and wait. And the medicinal has been expanded. I think recreational has a much harder road to go from the people that I talk to than certainly Governor Murphy seems to think. I think he thought it was going to be 100 days, which I believe is today actually. Oh, we're just going to have recreational. Everyone's going to be in favor of it. So talk a little bit about some of the companies that are bringing the phone off the hook, but not necessarily making the deal because there's still a little hesitation for what you guys are seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the expanding of the medical is probably the best way to do it with the opioid crisis going on instead of going to full recreational. I think what Murphy's struggling with and what every governor has struggled with is increasing revenue for the state. I was behind a big push to bring gaming to northern New Jersey. It's a no-brainer because the market is up here. We're right across from Manhattan. I mean, that's revenue dollars that unfortunately we're not taking advantage of because southern New Jersey won't allow us to do it. With cannabis coming in, he's thinking, this will be another revenue producer. Expanding it to medical, picked up, tripled, quadrupled the amount of people on that were available to it. But what we are seeing is that the big companies are coming in. They do like the market. They like the demographics here. They like where we're located. And they're looking for warehouse space left and right.
When talking to some of the national owners here, they get excited because they see the work and the numbers because they're ready to pay a premium for the space, and they kick it up to the CEO who sits. It's funny, one of the big company CEOs sits in Denver, and they can't do the deal because of what they're hearing from Sessions about how he's going to crack down on it. So there is some scared people out there, and I think when you look at what happened in Denver, even they're locally they're killing it. But they still can't use credit cards. It's still everything's cash based. I actually invested in a tech app called AeroPay that is going to be kind of working. It's going to work as a credit card, and for the companies in Denver, some of them at least. And I think that it'll be an interesting trend. But I think as long as the federal government continues to crack down, the local groups, no matter what they say, if it's a national company, it's going to be difficult. Yeah. And then the banks lending to that reader owner, they're going to have questions there as well.
Yeah, it can't be a national firm. A cannabis company can't rent from a landlord that has a loan with Bank of America, Wells Fargo, what have you, because it's illegal.
The banks have come out and said that we will not lend. Wells Fargo did come out and say we will not make real estate loans for cannabis facilities.
All right, this side of the room, you guys are getting killed. Who's got a question over here? Yes, sir.
Are you seeing, according to the new tax law, an increase in 1031 exchanges?
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes, and part of that is a lot of highly appreciated assets that aren't generating significant cash flow, so yields have changed, so people want to upgrade their properties. Also, with real estate and 1031 exchanges, people want depreciation. These properties that they've held on for significant periods of time are not generating depreciation and deductions. So they want to go and upgrade their property and buy tax depreciation to shelter some of that income.
We're seeing a lot of it with the migration from Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, where they had this 3-story industrial building since the 1900s, third generation, and it gets zoned for 20-story residential. So now they have all this, and they're young, they still want to continue working. It's had some upward pressure on pricing too, because they just sold something for $700 a foot in the Bronx. So $150, $200 in New Jersey sounds cheap, right?
That's right.
Good time for just a couple more.
I have a quick question. So we've got all these very nice major projects going on with presumably not a lot of infrastructure for travel and cars and whatnot. But every place we've ever done a new intersection, new roads, et cetera, has been boomtown, particularly in the last couple of years. What do you think the future of these large projects is going to be? Most notably with the issues of transportation, but most importantly with what you originally talked about, Kevin, the ability to get incentives, a stabilized tax basis, knowing that your expenses are going to increase, but trying to cap those in a manner that makes sense. I think it's a really big deal. Right? I think that the unknowns for the projects that we're currently doing, almost from all across the state now, I think we'd have anything really completed of major size if we didn't have incentives, right? And if those are going to go away, you know, what's the next step that we take to make sure that development or redevelopment or infrastructure improvement takes hold?
Very good question. I mean, we're seeing, well, with all those credits and grants and whatnot that were given, it definitely allowed all the large projects, when it was somewhat of a soft market, to get started. We have a major project being done by Forest City in Jersey City that had a tax credit and a pilot from the city. And as a result of it, each tranche required 10% affordable housing. So they were able to do a 20% affordable housing, inclusionary housing in a multi-family building in downtown Jersey City. They have phase 1B or phase 2 of that project coming up, but the state money for that grant is gone, that credit is gone. So we had to go back to the city and say, hey, that tax credit's no longer available from the state. Can we drop our affordable housing down to 10%? I said, ooh, that's not going to look good. I said, well, it's the reality. I mean, we had 2 tranches to make the affordable housing work. Otherwise, we're going to have to go standard taxes, conventional taxes. So they decided to move forward on a major project with no grants, no pilots, and it's one of the first I know of that doesn't have it. But the margins are thin. I mean, any large project, the margins are fairly thin. That's why Governor Christie and his administration felt that it was important to keep those projects going, keep the workers working, keep the jobs flowing. That's not going to happen under the Murphy administration from the standpoint of the tax credit giveaways. So what's going to change that? We'll see. I don't know. Scary.
Yeah. I feel it's tough to answer that question because, you know, the market's still so hot. So yes, there's some warning signs, but there were warning signs a year or 2 years ago. Everyone, you know. So I think that as long as people keep taking space, and because we have New York, we're a bit sheltered in the sense that for at least on the industrial side and on the residential side, because people commuting to the city, we're in a good spot. But I think that as those start to really go away in the next, you know, year, 18 months, I mean, we'll see.
Do you see any major projects on the boards, Evan, that will be completed without a pilot or something like a pilot?
Yeah. Yes. We're actually we're doing one right now in Newark, and it's a 300,000 square foot building. We do have really good activity on it though, and but everybody is waiting to see where we're going to be on our taxes, and so I think that there will be a lot of pause and reflection to see, you know, because you hear the stories as I, you know, earlier I was talking about a building in Elizabeth where they estimated the taxes to be in the 250 range. I mean, you know, if you're operating a business on margins, and all of a sudden you find out that you just got another, you know, $300,000 a year in expenses, that's a lot, and it's a big problem. So
I think one trend that's happening, Nevins, if I came to you and I asked you to prepare me an industrial lease, I don't mean to back you into a corner, but how many pages is that lease?
62.
Wow.
How many?
It depends if he's charging by the page.
More than 60?
Yeah.
So Prologis has come out with a lease that's,
Excuse me.
for all intents and purposes, it's a modified gross lease, but it's 17 pages. And they're capping some of the operating expenses. You know, Prologis is the world's largest owner of industrial properties, but they're capping things because they think that's a trend. How do you, and again, just imagine most of their tenants are 3PLs and logistics companies, trucking companies. So they want to have their budget. They want to forecast out going many years. And this 17-page lease allows them to do that. So that, to me, is a big changer. I think to your point, it's not so much on industrial, but the pilots, any redevelopment project we have been involved with, nonetheless, from right now to the past couple of years, every residential redevelopment project has had a pilot that I have seen.
I think we got time for one more. Yes, Ness.
I joined the word and saying that you can eat on Hackensack, Andrew. And not only do I do it for lunch all the time, but I have 2 teenage boys, so I fill up big time on my way home from work for Argentinian, Cuban, Indian, Thai, everything. So that's a plug for Hackensack. Support Hackensack.
Excuse me, but are you going there for dinner?
Oh, we do. Yes,
Oh.
I've had birthday parties, all you can eat for the Argentinian place with my boys.
Nice.
I get it, boys. I get it. Okay.
But my question is, someone had made mention of the affordable housing, and 5-10 years ago, when affordable housing wasn't so much on because it was all we were all in a waiting game, but now it's big time, and a lot of the projects 2 years ago didn't really have affordable housing in mind. It's a new component in every developer's mind. How is that affecting commercial real estate in New Jersey?
Well, quickly, can you just, I agree, yes, it's a huge component, but can you tell us why? I mean, can you give the 30-second overview about the Supreme Court going back, making it retroactive?
Well, we were all waiting. All the municipalities thought, well, we can, we don't really have to worry about these numbers, and we don't have to really put the teeth on developers that they have to either provide inclusionary zoning or have to provide the 2.5% development fee. All of a sudden, municipalities are realizing that they're going to have to provide those numbers, and fair share housing is requiring settlements with every municipality. And so you have now in the pipeline settlements around the state which are telling developers we must provide inclusionary zoning or inclusionary housing on my site, or I have to pay for it somewhere else. And it's a real number.
And that's why the pilots are critical.
And now every town is allowing that. I mean, I know large towns that are saying, no, we want you to comply with the fair housing requirement. You are going to put in mixed use development, and we're not giving you a pilot. How does that work?
It's challenging. I mean, it's definitely upsetting the apple cart. I mean, the 90% of the developers aren't accustomed to doing that. They like to pay into a fund and not have to deal with it, but it's becoming a reality. And as I said, we just in Jersey City, I know I keep talking about it, but it's just so active there. There's plenty of affordable housing in Jersey City. But the mayor, the politics of it, they really want to push it so that downtown has inclusionary affordable housing. And so there are no pilots unless you do affordable housing in the building. In other areas of the city, it's a little more lenient. But moving outside into the other areas, like you're bringing up, it's budget issues. It causes pause on those projects to figure out how they're going to do it, because they're not used to doing it. I think it's stopping projects. I think it's certainly giving pause. They're trying to figure out a way to do it and make the capital stack work.
So Simon, let me turn to you. When people come to you and they have all of these tax changes and all these potential tax changes, what are the 1 or 2 questions when they're ringing the phone for you? What are their number 1 concerns, and how are you dealing with those?
Most popular question I'm entertaining now is the new 199A deduction, which if the 30 seconds on that is under the new Tax Cut and Jobs Act, they lowered the corporate rate to 21%, so they had to give something to the small, quote-unquote, small business pass-through entities, which allows for a 20% deduction on qualified business income. What's qualified business income? There's a lot of pages on that, but essentially if you're self-employed, you have a partnership, you're an S-Corp, unless you're a specified trade or business, which probably eliminates everybody in this room, accountant, attorney, medical provider, you're excluded from that. So a lot of the questions are, do I qualify for this 199A deduction? How's it going to affect my income taxes and my after-tax cash flow? And with the real estate, as part of the negotiations at the last hour, they included a provision in 199A for real estate. So rental projects do qualify for the 199A deduction. It's very, very limited because it's mostly based upon wages, and most rental projects, unless they have full-time maintenance staff support, janitorial, etc., don't have salaries. They don't have wages that they're paying to employees. So the other component is based upon your basis in the property. So they did give something to the real estate developers, owners, operators.
All right, well, listen, we're respectful of your time and the panelists' time and everyone here, so I'm going to give each gentleman a chance for 2 minutes, sort of a closing statement, something you want the audience to leave with about what you see in the market and what your role in it is. So, Nevins, we'll start with you on this side.
Born and raised in New Jersey. Raising my family here. I'm an owner of Connell Foley, and I'm bullish on its future. I do think, there are budgetary issues ahead of us for the state, but I think we are well positioned and well situated to weather this storm, and we'll find ourselves coming back on top shortly.
So I was in New York, and I was one of the groups that I think that everyone's talking about moving out to Jersey, where me and my wife and 4 kids moved from the city to Ridgewood for the schools and all those things. So I love it here, and I think that it's a great place for business, and it's a great place for industry to thrive. And I think that even with some of these changes, because of the city and because of e-com and because of the port, we will be sheltered a little bit from really most anything because of those factors. So I think continue to invest and continue to like it, and I think we're in good shape.
I just think that there's been a lot of changes in the past few months. I think everybody should call their accountant, speak to them to discuss their personal tax situation, and also look at your real estate projects. How do the tax laws affect them and your clients? Banks, underwriting, what is their after-tax cash flow going to be to your clients? Is that something they're comfortable with? There's other rules related to 199A, which I spoke about. There's the new qualified opportunity zones. There's lots of things available, lots of new things that everybody's got to get comfortable with. And then, of course, the Department of Treasury has to come out with guidance on a lot of the stuff that they've rushed through.
Similar to Nevins, I'm born, raised in New Jersey. The only real time I was away was 4 years in college, and when I was away, I liked very much to accentuate my accent, to let everyone know I was from the East Coast. But the problems that we have are a lot better than the problems we had in 2008. For the first time in my career in 2008, there was some sleepless nights about getting financing done on a couple of our projects. We're not there. So, our problems are growth problems, which are all pretty good. Kevin's right, and so is Simon. We're between New York and Philly, Boston and DC. So we're pretty insulated. I just would like to see an administration to think that the driver in all of this, because I'm a capitalist first, is business. And some of this stuff, I get a little nervous because it's not sustainable. But other than that, we're in a good spot.
All right, I will drive everyone's attention to our next panel, which will interest, I think, a lot of people in this room about New Jersey's underground construction economy that we're doing with CCT and some of the unions, talking about what they're trying to do to address that issue and help that and how important that is to the construction industry. So that is May 9th, and I think we're doing it down in Edison, Forest Gate down in Central Jersey. So we hope to see you there. With that, I thank you for your time. These guys are going to be here for a while. If you want to talk and network with them, talk and network with each other, we welcome that. We'll be here for a while. We're going to get one group photo of you guys, and then we'll go from there. Thank you very much.